Today we will be looking at some of the most horrific crimes to have ever occurred in Malaysia's history. As the title suggests, most of the cases we will discuss in today's video, unfortunately, still remain unsolved. However, make sure you stay to the end, as we will also be discussing the brutal case of Noor Suzaily Mukhtar, an engineering student whose lifeless body was thrown out of a moving bus on the busy streets of Malaysia's capital. But before we get to that, let's start with the earliest crime on this list. The Love Triangle Murder. Back in 1979, a shocking incident rocked the town when the news of Jean Pereira Sinapa's murder spread like wildfire. The whole community was abuzz with the mysterious circumstances surrounding her death. Jean, a former beauty queen, was found dead with multiple stab wounds in a car parked beside the federal highway on April 6th. However, the discovery of her body was not the only thing that sent shockwaves through the town. Beside her was her fiancé, Karthigesu, unconscious and claiming to have been attacked while using the bathroom. As the police started their investigations, they found no evidence of any blow to Karthigesu's head or any urine at the crime scene. This led to speculations that his story might not have been true. The investigators also discovered that Jean had been exchanging love letters with a Sri Lankan doctor, which raised suspicions of jealousy being a possible motive for the murder. Despite conducting a thorough investigation, the authorities were unable to find enough evidence to pin the blame on anyone. Karthigesu was arrested and held in custody for over 2 years before being finally acquitted in 1981 due to the lack of evidence. The case then went cold, leaving the whole town wondering about the truth behind Jean's death. The incident became one of the most talked about events in the town's history, with people speculating and discussing the possible motives behind the murder. Even after all these years, the case still remains unsolved, and the truth behind Jean's death still eludes everyone. Some people believe that the investigation was botched, while others think that the murderer was never caught because they were too clever to leave behind any evidence. Nevertheless, the story of Jean Pereira Sinapa's murder has become a part of the town's folklore, passed down from one generation to the next. It has actually become a cautionary tale for young girls, warning them about the dangers of love triangles and the devastating consequences that they can have. The School Girl Murder. The 1999 murder case of Audrey Melissa Bathanathan, a 17-year-old student from the Methodist Girls' School in Kuala Lumpur, remains a haunting tragedy that rocked the nation. Her untimely death was a horrific incident that sent shockwaves throughout the country, leaving Audrey's family and friends devastated. Margaret Francis, Audrey's mother, was a graphics designer who had high hopes for her daughter's future. On May 17, 1999, Audrey left for school like any other day, walking with a friend for a while before heading off on her own. But little did anyone know that this would be the last time anyone saw her alive. When Audrey failed to return home that day, Margaret became concerned and started looking for her daughter. However, Audrey's absence from school was the first hint that something terrible had happened. Her family and friends began to search for her frantically, hoping that she would be found safe and sound. But tragically, Audrey's body was discovered the next day near Tenaga Nasional substation on Jalan Kinabalu, still dressed in her school uniform. The discovery of her lifeless body was a crushing blow to her family, friends, and the entire community. The police quickly arrested 2 drug addicts who were in the area, but they were subsequently released due to a lack of evidence. The absence of any further leads and the inconclusive results of the investigation meant that no one was ever held accountable for Audrey's murder. Audrey's death was a heart-wrenching incident that left a deep impression on her local community. Her loss was a reminder of the dangers that lurk in the world, and how life can be unpredictable and unfair. Even after more than 2 decades have now passed, the memory of Audrey and her tragic end continue to haunt those who knew her and those who followed her story. The BO Murderer. Norita Samsudin, a 22-year-old marketing executive, was not only talented in her field, but also had strikingly good looks that earned her several offers for modelling gigs. She was a young woman with a bright future, full of dreams and aspirations. However, her life took a tragic turn when she was found dead in a Damansara condominium on December 5, 2003. The news of her death came as a shock to her friends and family, who were devastated by the loss of such a young and promising individual. According to reports, Noorita's body was discovered lying on a bed, with her limbs bound by wire and her mouth gagged with a towel. The cause of her death was not immediately clear, but it was evident that she had suffered a horrific ordeal. The circumstances surrounding Noorita's death were perplexing, and the overall investigation was very complex, with many possible suspects emerging. One individual was seen leaving her room around the time of her death, with her housemates reporting a strong body odour emanating from the stranger. The investigation ultimately led to the arrest and trial of her ex-boyfriend, Hanif Basri Abdul Rahman, who was named as the main suspect in this case. However, despite the prosecution's efforts, Hanif was acquitted in 2004 due to insufficient evidence. The tragedy of Noorita Samsudin's death is a reminder of the fragility of life and how quickly it can be taken away. It is also a sobering reminder of the importance of justice and the need to hold those responsible for such heinous crimes accountable for their actions. The Ampang Murder. Zhu Jianhuang, a 14-year-old Chinese national, made a heart-wrenching call to his father where he expressed of his fear of being beaten. His father was left feeling helpless and worried about his child's safety, but little did he know that this call would be the last time he would hear his son's voice. Tragically, 3 days after this call, Zhu Jianhuang was found dead in the swimming pool of his Malaysian uncle's home in Ampang. His body showed clear signs of brutal physical abuse, with his limbs bound and his body badly bruised. The uncle, Ko Kim Tek, and 2 of his employees were arrested in connection with the boy's death, but despite being accused of this heinous crime, all 3 of them were eventually acquitted in 2010 due to the prosecution's failure to clear up many unanswered questions surrounding the case. The injustice of this situation is compounded by the fact that the case remains unsolved even today, leaving Zhu Jianhuang's family with no sense of closure or justice for their son's untimely death. Ko Kim Tek, who many believe was responsible for the boy's murder, has since disappeared from the public eye and has not been seen since his acquittal. This tragedy serves as a stark reminder of the dangers of physical abuse and the importance of taking these allegations seriously. The failure of the justice system to bring Zhu Jianhuang's killers to justice is a horrible reminder of the many injustices that continue to plague our society, and the importance of continued efforts to combat them every single day. The Shopping Mall Murder. The mere thought of a violent attack and murder occurring in a bustling shopping mall without anyone noticing truly sends shivers down my spine. The notion of being surrounded by people yet being helpless to protect yourself or others is a daunting one indeed. However, this was precisely the fate of Mei Go Li Fang, a young woman who met a tragic end on February 17, 2005. Her lifeless body was discovered at the rear of her newly opened boutique in a mall in Petaling, Jaya. What makes this incident all the more harrowing is the nature of the crime itself. Mei Go Li Fang had suffered multiple stab wounds, and there were indications that she had also been sexually assaulted. However, what was particularly peculiar was that the crime scene contained several valuable items, yet none of them had been taken, except for the victim's cell phone. This raised questions about the motive of the perpetrator and added an eerie dimension to the already distressing case. Although the authorities had initially picked up a businessman to assist with the investigations, he was subsequently cleared of any involvement after an alibi was established. Despite numerous efforts and intensive investigations, the case has remained unsolved, leaving Mei Go Li Fang's family and loved ones in a state of despair and grief. The tragedy that befell Mei Go Li Fang is a stark reminder of the dangers that can lurk in even the most seemingly safe and secure of places. It also underscores the importance of remaining vigilant and aware of your surroundings, no matter how seemingly trivial the situation may appear. The bus of horrors. I think that we can all agree commuting is the worst. From unreliable public transport to congestion, travelling to work can sometimes be an absolute nightmare. But perhaps this final story will make you appreciate the next time your local bus is running late. 23 years ago, a normal bus journey to work turned into a real, living nightmare that took the life of a young Malaysian woman. Noor Suzaily Mukhtar was a 24-year-old girl from Malaysia. She had recently returned home after graduating from De Montfort University in the UK. On the morning of October 7th, Noor was travelling to her job at a private medical centre in Port Klang, where she worked as a computer engineer. As she did every day from Kuala Lumpur, she boarded an intercity bus heading for Port Klang. But little did she know, this would be the last bus ride of her life. Just a few stops before her final destination, most of the passengers had departed from the bus, all except for Noor. She was now the only person left, other than the bus driver, of course. Unfortunately, however, Noor never arrived at her workplace that day, as the bus was diverted, and she was instead taken to Jalan Bukit Tinggi. One of the witnesses was a man named Devon, an 18-year-old student cycling to a tuition centre. He claimed to have seen a stationary bus on the side of the road and suspected that something was amiss. Devon further examined the scene, and this was when he noticed a topless woman inside the bus, frantically slamming her hands on the tinted window of the passenger door. The bus driver then detected Devon examining the situation and simply shooed him away. After relentlessly chasing after the bus on his bike, Devon then witnessed the bus driver, who was later identified as Hanafi, dump Noor's lifeless body out of the moving vehicle near a construction site. The body was then taken to the closest hospital, where a post-mortem revealed that the woman was brutally assaulted. Hanafi had stripped Noor Suzaily, tied her hands with her headscarf, and then decided to rape and sodomize her. After he was finished, Hanafi then used the same scarf to strangle her. The report also showed that the deceased had suffered a staggering 44 injuries to the body, including a broken neck. This case is truly disturbing, especially as the victim was simply commuting to work, a choice millions of people around the world make every single day. I'm sure when she got on that bus, the last thing she expected was to be assaulted. But at the very least, hopefully this story will serve as a reminder that when you get inside of someone else's vehicle, you really are putting your life in their hands. As for the other true crime cases mentioned, if you would like us to keep making these types of videos, please let us know by leaving a like. Also, if there are any other countries you would like us to cover in this series, please leave your idea down in the comments below. And finally, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss our next upload. But until then, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.